Caleb Whitaker hadn't tasted a hot meal in 3 years, not since he laid his wife beneath the red Kansas dirt and turned the key on her bedroom door forever. But one burning noon in Abilene, when a bleeding woman knelt in the dust, gathering her broken belongings while the whole town spat her name like poison, something inside the lonely rancher broke wide open. He stepped down from his wagon and spoke 5 quiet words that changed 2 ruined lives. If you believe a woman's worth ain't measured by rumor, hit subscribe and stay till the very last word. And tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I want to see just how far Clara Bennett's story will travel. The boarding house door slammed so hard the front window cracked clean across. Get out. Clara Bennett. Get out. And don't you ever set your shameful foot on this porch again. Mrs. Eliza Hargrove's voice cut through the noon heat like a blade through sinew. Up and down Abilene's main street, doors creaked open. Men set down their tools. Women stepped onto porches with their hands pressed to their mouths, pretending they hadn't been waiting all morning for this very moment. Clara Bennett caught herself on the porch rail. Her lower lip was split. A thin line of blood crawled down her chin and dropped onto the collar of her gray cotton dress. She did not cry. She did not beg. She had decided 3 days ago, somewhere on the road between St. Louis and this miserable wind-burnt town, that she would never beg another living soul for anything again. Mrs. Hargrove, ma'am, I paid my rent through Sunday. You paid me with stolen money. That money was earned. That money was earned on your back, you wicked thing. A few of the women on the porches gasped. A few smiled. I worked 60 hours a week in a hotel kitchen, ma'am. You can write to Mr. Howard at the Planters Hotel in St. Louis, and he will tell you. I have already written Miss. Mrs. Hargrove stepped onto the porch, her black widow's bonnet stiff as iron. And I have heard back. I know exactly what kind of woman you are, and this is a Christian town. Clara's hand tightened on her suitcase handle until her knuckles went white. Then I reckon I am leaving a Christian town. You are leaving with what you brought in, and not a stitch more. The boarding house door swung open one last time. Mrs. Hargrove flung Clara's spare boots, her shawl, and her small leather-bound Bible into the dirt of the street. The Bible split open at the spine. Pages fluttered up into the dust. A man laughed somewhere. A child asked her mother what was happening, and the mother hushed her and pulled her inside. Clara walked down the porch steps, slow, steady. She would not let them see her stumble. She knelt in the dust and gathered her things. The boots first, the shawl folded tight against her chest, the Bible gentle as a sleeping baby, her cook's knife in its leather sheath, a faded photograph of a woman she would not name to anyone in this town, not for all the gold in California. A folded letter tied with a black ribbon. She had just reached for the photograph when a shadow fell across her hands. Well, well, look what got swept out into the sunshine. Clara did not look up. Move along, sir. Now that ain't no way for a girl to talk to a paying man, is it? The cowboy was drunk. She could smell it before she saw the dust on his boots. Whiskey and old sweat and a meanness that had been brewing since breakfast. He bent down and snatched her suitcase from the dirt. He shook it like a sack of grain. Her last folded chemise, 2 clean aprons, a small purse with $8.40. Everything she owned in this world spilled out across the road. Pretty light, ain't it? A girl like you ought to have more than this. Give it back, sir. Sir, did you hear that, boys? The cowboy turned to the gathered crowd. She calls me sir. He kicked her cook's knife. It skittered 10 feet down the road and came to rest against the wheel of a hitched wagon. That was when the wagon's owner came around the corner. Caleb Whitaker had ridden into town that morning for fence wire and a pound of horseshoe nails. He had spoken to exactly 3 souls, the blacksmith, the hardware clerk, and the boy who watered his team. He had said, much obliged, to each one, and nothing more. 3 years of widow's silence had made his voice a stranger to him. He saw the knife at the wheel of his wagon. He saw the woman in the dust. He saw the cowboy laughing. He stopped walking. For a long second, Caleb Whitaker stood absolutely still in the white-hot Kansas noon, and he thought about climbing into his wagon and driving home, and never speaking of any of this to a living soul. He had cattle to brand. He had a barn roof to mend. He had a dead wife whose room he hadn't opened in 3 years, and a heart that had stopped feeling much of anything since the day he closed that door. Then the woman in the dust looked up at him. Her eyes were gray as river stones. Her lip was bleeding, and she did not ask him for help. She did not beg with her eyes the way other women had begged him in his life. She just looked at him the way a soldier looks at another soldier across a battlefield, and her gray eyes said one thing only: "I will get up from this dirt with or without you, mister." Caleb Whitaker felt something in his chest crack open like the boarding house window. He stepped forward. "Pick that up for her." His voice was low. The whole street went still. The drunk cowboy turned slow. He squinted. "You talking to me, friend?" "I reckon I am." "And who exactly might you be?" "Just a man what wants you to pick that up for her." The cowboy laughed. He looked at the crowd. He looked at Caleb's plain coat and his sunburnt face, and his big hands hanging easy at his sides. "I don't pick up after no fallen woman, friend. And neither should you, lessen you want her stink on your saddle." Caleb tipped his hat back with one finger. "I'm going to ask you one more time. Pick it up." Or what? That was the question that always came. Caleb had heard it 100 times in saloons and stockyards, and on the long cattle trails, back when his wife was alive, and he had laughed easy and fought easier still. He had not heard it in 3 years. He had not needed to. He answered it now the way he had always answered it. He hit the drunk cowboy square in the nose. The crack was clean and loud. The man went down sideways into the dust beside Clara. Blood sprayed across the front of his shirt. He bellowed and rolled and clutched his face and called Caleb a name that Mrs. Hargrove later swore had never been spoken in the town of Abilene before that day. Caleb did not look at the man on the ground. He knelt beside the suitcase. He gathered the chemise and the aprons. He folded them careful the way his mama had taught him when he was a boy. He placed the purse on top. He looked at Clara. "Ma'am, would you allow me to put your knife back where it belongs?" She nodded once. She did not trust her voice. He fetched the knife from his wagon wheel. He wiped the dust from the sheath against his trouser leg. He placed it in her suitcase. He closed the latch. He stood up. He offered her his hand. She did not take it. She stood up on her own, the way she had stood up every day of her 27 years, and she lifted her chin, and she met him eye to eye. "Much obliged, mister." Caleb Whitaker. Clara Bennett. The boarding house porch creaked. Mrs. Eliza Hargrove came down the steps like the wrath of God in widow's black. Caleb Whitaker. "Mrs. Hargrove? I cannot believe what I just witnessed." "I expect you can, ma'am. You was standing right there." "That woman is unfit." "That woman is bleeding in the street, ma'am, and there is a cowboy at her feet with a broken nose, and I'm fixing to go home now. You will hear me out, Caleb Whitaker. In the memory of your sainted wife, you will hear me out." The name of his wife stopped him cold. It always did. 3 years it had been, and the name still hit him in the same place every time, just under the breastbone like a slow fist. "Speak your piece, ma'am. Quickly." Mrs. Hargrove straightened her bonnet. She looked at Clara the way a woman looks at a rat in her flour barrel. "This girl came in on the Tuesday stage. She has been in my house 4 days. In those 4 days I have written to every reputable hotel in St. Louis. I have learned things, Mr. Whitaker, that I would not repeat in mixed company. She is a fornicator. She is a thief. She was abandoned by a man who had the good sense to see her clear, and she has no business in this town. That's so, ma'am. I am telling you this because I knew Sarah. I sat with you at her funeral, Caleb. I baked the pie for her wake." "You did, ma'am. It was a fine pie." "Then you will listen when I say that taking up with this creature will stain Sarah's memory. It will sour your beef contracts. It will turn every decent woman in this county against your house, and it will be the ruin of you." Caleb Whitaker stood very still. He looked at the cracked window of the boarding house. He looked at the women on the porches who had been waiting all morning to see Clara Bennett broken in the dirt. He looked at the drunk cowboy crawling toward the saloon on his hands and knees, leaving a snail's trail of blood in the dust. He looked at Clara Bennett. "Miss Bennett." "Mr. Whitaker." "Can you cook?" Clara Bennett did not answer right away. She wiped the blood from her chin with the back of her wrist. She looked at Mrs. Hargrove. She looked at the women on the porches. She looked at the town that had spent 4 days deciding she was not fit to breathe its air. She turned back to Caleb. "Mr. Whitaker, I can cook better than any woman in this town who has spent the last 4 days on her knees praying for my downfall." A woman on the nearest porch gasped out loud. Caleb Whitaker did not smile, but something moved behind his eyes that had not moved in 3 years. "Wages are $6 a month, room and board, and you don't go in the south bedroom. You don't ask after it. You don't open the door. Are we clear? We are clear, mister." "Then climb up." He picked up her suitcase. He carried it to the wagon. He set it among the rolls of fence wire and the kegs of horseshoe nails. He took her elbow gentle as a man handling a wounded bird, and he helped her up onto the bench beside him. Mrs. Eliza Hargrove watched all of this with both hands clenched white at her sides. "Caleb Whitaker, you will regret this hour for the rest of your natural life." "Yes, ma'am. I expect I might." He clicked his tongue. The team leaned into the traces. The wagon rolled forward. They did not look back. Neither of them spoke for the first half-mile out of town. Clara Bennett held her suitcase on her lap with both hands. Caleb Whitaker held the reins with one hand and the brim of his hat with the other. When the last buildings of Abilene fell behind them, Clara cleared her throat. "Mr. Whitaker." "Ma'am." "I want you to understand something before I take 1 penny of your money." "I'm listening." "I am not what that woman said. I have done some things I am not proud of. I have done a lot more things I am proud of. I came to this town with $8.40 and a letter, and I aim to leave it someday with my name returned to me. I will cook for you. I will clean for you. I will mend what needs mending. But I will not be saved by you. I am not a stray mister. Do you hear me?" Caleb Whitaker kept his eyes on the road. "I hear you, Miss Bennett. I want to be heard." "You are heard?" "Then we are clear. We are clear." They rode another mile in silence. Then Caleb Whitaker spoke again quiet, without looking at her. "For what it's worth, ma'am, I did not stop my wagon back there because I thought you needed saving." "Why did you stop then?" "Because the man laughed. And I have not been able to stomach a man laughing at a woman in the dirt since I was 11 years old and watched my own daddy do it to my mama." Clara Bennett turned her face away from him. She did not let him see her eyes, but her hand on the suitcase loosened by 1 degree. They rode another 2 miles. The sun beat down. The road stretched. It was Jonah Pike riding in from the east pasture to meet his boss, who saw the note first. "Caleb." "Jonah." "There's something pinned on the back of your wagon." Caleb pulled up the team. He climbed down. He walked around to the rear. A square of butcher paper had been pinned through the wood of the tailgate with a 4-inch iron nail. It had not been there when he left the hardware store. It had not been there when he climbed onto his bench beside Clara. Someone had walked right up to his wagon in the middle of the street in front of the whole town and driven that nail home where God and every soul in Abilene could see it. Caleb read the note once. He read it again. He folded it slow and put it in his coat pocket. "Boss," Jonah said. "Ride on home, Jonah." "Caleb, what's it say?" "I said ride on home." Jonah Pike looked at Clara Bennett sitting on the bench with her bleeding lip and her suitcase on her lap. He looked at Caleb's face. He tipped his hat to Clara. "Ma'am." "Sir." Jonah rode on. Caleb climbed back up onto the bench. He picked up the reins. He did not start the team moving. "Mr. Whitaker." "Ma'am?" "What did the note say?" "It said what I expected it to say." "Mr. Whitaker." "Miss Bennett." "I want to know what it said." He was quiet a long time. The team stamped. A horsefly buzzed past his ear. It said, "Bring her back, or we burn you out with her." Clara Bennett did not flinch. She did not gasp. She did not turn her head. She looked straight ahead down the long dust road that led to Caleb Whitaker's ranch, and she said in a voice as level as the Kansas horizon, "And what do you mean to do about that, mister?" Caleb Whitaker did not answer her right away. He folded the note one more time inside his pocket. He tightened his grip on the reins. He looked at the woman beside him, 27 years old, bleeding, proud, ruined in the eyes of every soul they had left behind in Abilene, and he thought of the south bedroom in his own house, locked these 3 long years. "Miss Bennett, Mr. Whitaker, I mean to drive you home. I mean to feed my men. And the first man who comes onto my land with a torch in his hand is going to find out I still know how to shoot the head off a rattlesnake at 40 yards. He clicked his tongue. The wagon rolled forward. Clara Bennett did not look back at the town of Abilene. Caleb Whitaker did not look back. But the note inside his coat pocket pressed against his ribs through the wool like a small hot coal. And somewhere 5 miles ahead of them, on a ranch that had not seen a woman's hand in 3 years, a south bedroom door stood locked, and a kitchen stood cold, and a dead wife's name hung in the quiet air like a prayer that nobody had finished saying, and neither one of them spoke another word all the long miles home. The Whitaker ranch came into view a little past 4 o'clock, and Caleb did not look at it the way a man looks at his home. He had not looked at it that way in 3 years. He drove past the gate and up to the porch and pulled the team to a stop. He climbed down. He came around to her side of the wagon. "Miss Bennett? Mr. Whitaker, this is the house. The kitchen is on the south side. The pump is 20 paces from the back door. There is a smokehouse, a root cellar, and a chicken coop. Your room is the small one off the kitchen. The men eat at 6. I expect the first meal tomorrow morning, not tonight. You have had a day. I will cook tonight." "Miss Bennett." "I said I will cook tonight, mister. I do not eat bread I have not earned." Caleb Whitaker looked at her a long second. Then he nodded one time. "Yes, ma'am." He carried her suitcase up the 3 porch steps. He set it inside the front door. He turned around. "There are 5 men eating tonight. Jonah Pike, Tom Reed, Henry Coombs, Manuel Vargas, and a Comanche cattle hand we call Two Hawks. They have not eaten a meal cooked by a woman in 3 years. Then I expect they will be patient with whatever I set before them." "They will be more than patient, ma'am." He took 2 steps toward the door. Then he stopped. He turned back. "Miss Bennett, Mr. Whitaker, the south bedroom is at the end of that hallway. It has a brass key in the door. The key has been turned for 3 years. You will not turn it." "I will not, mister." "Not for cleaning, not for airing, not for any reason at all." "Mr. Whitaker, I heard you the first time." "I just wanted to be sure, ma'am." "You are sure. Now tell me where the flour is." He pointed. He left. Clara Bennett stood alone in the front room of a house that smelled like a man who had stopped trying to live. She did not weep. She did not sit down. She set her suitcase on the floor. She took her cook's knife from inside it. She walked into the kitchen. The flour was rancid in the bottom of the barrel. The salt pork hanging from the rafter had gone gray at the corners. There were 3 eggs in a chipped bowl on the table, and a half-pound of bacon wrapped in waxed paper. There was a sack of dried beans that had been waiting 2 years for a woman's hand. There was a jar of peach preserves with the lid sealed in candle wax. The handwriting on the label said, "Sarah June, 1876. Clara Bennett looked at that jar for a long minute. She did not open it. She placed it gently on the shelf where she had found it, and turned her back on it, and got to work. By 6 o'clock, she had biscuits in the oven, beans in the kettle, bacon in the skillet, and onions and peppers from the garden, chopped fine in a wooden bowl. She had not had time to do more. She had not been given more. The men came in at 6 exactly. Jonah Pike first had in his hands. Then Tom Reed, who was 60 and walked with a limp. Then Henry Coombs, who was 22 and could not stop staring at the kitchen door. Then Manuel Vargas, who crossed himself when he smelled the bacon. Then Two Hawks, who said nothing at all but stood at the threshold for a long moment with his eyes closed. They sat down at the long table. Caleb came in last. He took the chair at the head. "Boys. Boss. This is Miss Clara Bennett. She will be cooking for us from now on. You will treat her as you would treat your own sister, or your own mother, or your own daughter. Are we clear?" "Yes, boss." "Yes, sir." "Si, jefe." Two hawks nodded once. Clara Bennett carried the platter of biscuits to the table. She set it down. The men did not move. They stared at the biscuits as if she had brought them gold. "Eat, boys, they will go cold." Henry Coombs reached out. He picked up a biscuit. He held it to his face and breathed it in. His eyes filled up. "Oh, ma'am." "It is just a biscuit, Mr. Coombs." "Ma'am, I have not had a hot biscuit since my mama died in '75. Clara Bennett turned her face away from him. She walked back to the stove. She did not let any of them see her wipe her cheek with the back of her wrist. Jonah Pike took 2 biscuits. Tom Reed took 3. Manuel Vargas closed his eyes and chewed slow. Two Hawks broke his biscuit in half and laid one half on the windowsill before he ate the other, and Caleb saw him do it and did not say a word. Caleb did not eat at first. He watched her work at the stove. He watched her ladle beans into bowls. He watched the way she moved through his kitchen like a woman who had cooked in worse kitchens for harder men. Then she set a plate in front of him. "Mr. Whitaker, you have not put a fork to your food." "I am about to, Miss Bennett." "See that you do." He picked up his fork. He took a bite of beans. He took a bite of biscuit. He took a bite of bacon. He did not look up from his plate. After a long moment, he set down his fork. "Miss Bennett." "Mr. Whitaker." "Where did you learn to cook?" "My mother, and the kitchens of 3 hotels in St. Louis, and 1 steamboat between Memphis and New Orleans." "It is good food." "It is plain food, mister. Give me a proper pantry and I will show you good food." The men around the table laughed, not loud, not long, but a laugh. The first laugh that House had heard in 3 years. Caleb Whitaker stood up from the table. He took his hat off the peg by the door. He went out into the dusk and did not come back inside until the lamps had been put out. And when he came back, he walked the long hallway to the south bedroom door, and he laid his hand on the brass key, and he did not turn it. He went to his own bed in the back of the house, and he did not sleep. In the morning, Clara Bennett rose before the sun and made coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in, and the men came in one by one and tipped their hats to her and called her ma'am. And Henry Coombs said, "Good morning, Miss Clara," and his voice cracked when he said it. By the end of the first week, the curtains were washed. The windows were open. The chicken coop had been cleaned and patched, and the hens were laying again. The garden had been weeded. The pantry was scrubbed and ordered. There was bread on the table at every meal and butter in the dish, and the bacon had stopped going gray on the rafter because Clara hung it different. By the end of the second week, Tom Reed had stopped limping into the kitchen and started limping into the kitchen grinning. Manuel Vargas had taught Clara how to roast peppers over the open flame the way his grandmother had done it in Sonora. Two Hawks had brought her a fresh-killed rabbit and laid it on the porch step without a word. Henry Coombs had taken to washing his face before supper, and Caleb Whitaker had eaten 3 hot meals a day for 14 days straight, and he had not opened the south bedroom door, but he had stopped walking past it with his eyes shut. On the 15th morning, he drove the wagon into Abilene for supplies. Clara rode beside him. She had a list in her hand. She had her cook's knife in her belt. He pulled up in front of Hadley's General Store. He climbed down. He came around to help her down. She climbed down on her own. The bell over the door jangled. Mr. Aaron Hadley looked up from his ledger. He looked at Caleb. He looked at Clara. The smile slid off his face. Caleb. Aaron. What can I do for you? 2 sacks of flour. 1 sack of sugar. 5 pounds of coffee. Salt. Lard. Tin of cinnamon if you have it. Bolt of muslin. Box of needles. And whatever Miss Bennett needs from her list. Mr. Hadley did not move. Caleb, I can sell you the flour. I can sell you the sugar. I can sell you the coffee. I cannot sell anything to that woman. The store went quiet. 2 other customers stopped what they were doing. Caleb Whitaker laid his hat on the counter. Say that again, Aaron. You heard me, Caleb? I heard you. I want to hear it again. Mrs. Hargrove has spoken with the Merchants Association. We have all agreed. We will not sell to that woman. We will not sell anything that woman will touch. If you are buying for her, I cannot sell to you either." Clara Bennett stepped forward. She set her list on the counter very gently. "Mr. Hadley." "Miss, I have $8.40. I have come to spend it in your store. I have come to spend it on flour for the men who work at the Whitaker Ranch. They will eat the bread I bake from this flour. Will you sell it to me?" "I will not, miss." "Will you tell me to my face why?" "Because Mrs. Hargrove said—" "I did not ask what Mrs. Hargrove said. I asked you, Mr. Hadley, what you believe. Look me in the eye and tell me what you believe." Mr. Hadley looked at his ledger. He did not look up. "I have a family, Miss Bennett." "So do those men at the ranch. They have a family at that ranch, and I am the one who cooks for them. Will you sell me the flour?" "I cannot, miss." Clara Bennett picked up her list. She folded it slow. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Hadley." She turned. She walked out of the store. The bell jangled behind her. Caleb Whitaker stood at the counter for a long moment. He picked up his hat. He set it on his head. "Aaron." "Caleb." "How long have I been buying flour in this store?" 11 years, Caleb." "How much flour have I bought in 11 years?" "I would have to look in the ledger." "You will not need to look. I will tell you. I have bought from this store every 2 weeks for 11 years. That is 286 sacks of flour. That is 286 bags of sugar. That is more than 1,000 pounds of coffee. That is your daughter's wedding shoes. That is the wallpaper in your parlor. That is the buggy you bought your wife last spring." "Caleb, I am not finished. I have been a paying man at this counter since before you opened this store. I stood with you when your boy died. I helped you bury him. I never asked you for 1 dime of credit in 11 years. Caleb, I know. And today you will not sell flour to the woman who cooks at my ranch. Caleb, it is not personal. Aaron, it is the most personal thing that has ever happened in this store." Caleb Whitaker turned. He walked out. The bell jangled. He did not buy flour in Abilene that day. He did not buy sugar. He did not buy coffee. He climbed into the wagon. He picked up the reins. "Miss Bennett? Mr. Whitaker? We will drive to Salina tomorrow. It is 20 miles. They do not know us in Salina. They will sell to us in Salina. Mr. Whitaker." "Ma'am?" "You did not have to do that." "I did, ma'am." "You will lose business." "I have lost business before, Miss Bennett. I have not lost much sleep over it." She turned her face away from him. He drove the team out of town. That night a foal was born in the east pasture, and the mare died in the birthing. Manuel Vargas brought the foal up to the house wrapped in a horse blanket. He laid it on the floor in front of the cook stove. "Jefe, la yegua ha muerto. The mother is dead." Caleb came into the kitchen. He looked at the foal. He shook his head. "Manuel, it will not live. It needs the mother's first milk. We have nothing." "I know, Jefe. Take it back. Make it comfortable. It is the kindest thing." Clara Bennett knelt down on the floor beside the foal. She put her hand on its small, wet head. "Mr. Whitaker, boil me a pot of water. Bring me the goat from the east pen. The brown one, not the spotted one. And the sugar from the cupboard. And the cleanest rag in the house. Miss Bennett, that foal will be dead before sunrise. Then it will die warm and fed, mister. Boil the water." Caleb Whitaker boiled the water. Manuel brought the goat. 2 hawks brought the rag. Henry Coombs held the lantern. They stood in the kitchen for 3 hours while Clara Bennett milked the brown goat by hand, warmed the milk with sugar over the cook stove, and fed it drop by drop into the foal's small dark mouth from the corner of a cotton rag. The foal lived through the night. The foal lived through the morning. By noon, the foal was standing on 4 wobbling legs in the corner of the kitchen, and Henry Coombs was crying into his hat. Caleb Whitaker stood in the kitchen doorway. He watched Clara Bennett wipe the goat's milk from her wrists with her apron. He did not say a word. 3 days later, the church committee came up the road. Reverend Josiah Marsh in his black coat. Mrs. Eliza Hargrove beside him in her widow's bonnet. 2 deacons walking behind. They did not bring a wagon. They walked the last quarter-mile on foot the way men walk when they want to be seen walking. Caleb saw them coming. He met them at the porch. "Reverend." "Caleb." "What can I do for you, Reverend?" "Caleb, we have come on the business of the Lord." "The Lord has business at my ranch, has he?" "The Lord has business in every home in this county, Caleb, and you know it." "Say your piece, Reverend. I have a foal to feed." "Caleb, the congregation has met. We have prayed on it. We have wept on it. And we have come to you in love." "That's so. We are asking you, brother. We are asking you in the name of your sainted wife. We are asking you in the name of Christ. Send that woman away. Send her back to St. Louis. Pay her wages and her stage fare and send her gone. Do this for your soul, Caleb. Do this for Sarah's memory." Caleb Whitaker did not answer right away. He looked at Mrs. Hargrove. "Eliza." "Caleb. You walked into my kitchen the day Sarah died. Do you remember that?" "I remember, Caleb. You washed Sarah's face. You brushed Sarah's hair. You laid Sarah out in her blue dress." "I did, Caleb. I did all of that. And today you have come up my road in the heat to tell me that the woman who has fed my men 3 meals a day for 2 weeks is a stain on my Sarah's memory. Caleb, you must see." "Eliza, I will tell you what I see. I see a woman who took 31 cents out of my pocket last Tuesday and brought back coffee and salt that has fed 6 men. I see a woman who sat on the kitchen floor for 3 hours and saved a foal that I had told her was already dead. I see a woman who has not spoken one cross word in this house in 14 days. That is what I see. What I do not see, Eliza, is what you see. Tell me what you see." "Caleb, I see ruin." "Then we are seeing different things, Eliza." The Reverend Marsh stepped forward. "Caleb, there is more." "There is always more, Reverend." "Mr. Donovan was through town yesterday. He spoke to me." Caleb Whitaker went still. "Donovan, the cattle buyer." "That is the man, Caleb." "And what did Donovan say to you, Reverend?" "He said that if that woman is still cooking at your ranch on the first day of September, he will not be buying your beef this year, or any year following." Caleb Whitaker put both hands on the porch rail. He did not look up. The Donovan contract was $3,000. The Donovan contract was the difference between paying off the spring loan and going under by Christmas. The Donovan contract was the reason he had not sold his wife's piano. The Donovan contract was the air the Whitaker ranch breathed. "Get off my porch, Reverend." "Caleb, get off my porch, all of you. Go on. Walk back down the road the way you came. Caleb, you are making a terrible mistake." "I have made worse, Reverend. Walk." They walked. Caleb Whitaker stood on the porch and watched them go. He did not move for a long time after they had passed out of sight. Clara Bennett came out onto the porch behind him. She had heard. She had heard every word from the kitchen window. "Mr. Whitaker." "Miss Bennett." "The Donovan contract." "Is none of your business, ma'am." "It is some of my business, mister. It is being cancelled on my account." "It is being cancelled by a coward who lets a widow with a bonnet tell him what beef to buy." "Mr. Whitaker, you cannot afford to lose that contract." "I know what I can afford, Miss Bennett." "Then send me away." He turned. "What?" "Send me away, mister. Pay me the 2 weeks I have worked. Put me on the stage to Selena. You will sleep easier, and your men will eat all winter." Caleb Whitaker took one step toward her. "Miss Bennett, look at me." "I am looking at you." "You will not tell me how to run my ranch. You will not tell me which contract I can afford to lose. You will not tell me to send you away because some old woman in a black bonnet has decided you are not fit for the air she breathes. Do you understand me? Mr. Whitaker, listen to yourself. You are doing exactly what you said you would not do. You are saving me. You are standing between me and the world, and tomorrow you will resent me for it." "I will not." "You will, mister. Every man does, and I have told you. I am not a stray." "Miss Bennett, do not call it protection." "Caleb Whitaker, if you are only ashamed to stand beside me." The first name, She had used his first name. He felt it like a hand on his chest. "I am not ashamed to stand beside you, ma'am." "Then say it different. Say I am keeping her on because she has earned her place at my table. Say I am keeping her on because she is the best cook I have hired in 11 years. Say I am keeping her on because she is right and the town is wrong. Do not say I am keeping her on to save her. Because if you save me, mister, I do not stay." Caleb Whitaker took his hat off. He held it in both hands. "Clara." "Caleb, you are the best cook I have hired in 11 years. You are right. The town is wrong. I am keeping you on because you have earned your place at my table. And the Donovan contract can burn." She closed her eyes. She did not say anything for a long moment. Then she opened her eyes. "Then we are clear, Mr. Whitaker." "We are clear, Miss Bennett." They stood on the porch a long time. Neither one of them moved. The lightning came that night. It came out of the south just after supper, a low rumble first, and then the kind of dry summer storm that walks across the Kansas prairie spitting fire and not a drop of rain. Caleb stood on the porch and counted the seconds between the flashes. He had counted summer storms all his life. He knew when a storm was going to set the grass. "Jonah." "Boss, get the boys out of the bunkhouse. Saddle every horse we have. Two Hawks knows where the fire break is north of the creek. Tell him to ride it." "Yes, boss." "Manuel, get the wet sacks from the smokehouse and load the buckboard." "Si, jefe." "Henry, you stay with Miss Bennett at the house." "Boss." "You stay, son." "That is an order." Caleb pulled on his coat. He picked up his rifle. He went to the door. A flash of white split the sky over the north pasture, and a second later, the sound of it cracked the air, and Caleb saw the orange begin. "Lord have mercy, it is in the long grass." "Boss, the horses." "The horses are in the north corral." The north corral, 8 head, including the new foal who had been moved out that very morning to the small pen beside the mare paddock. Clara Bennett came out onto the porch in her boots and her gray dress, and she had her hair tied back, and she had Caleb's spare coat across her arm. "Mr. Whitaker?" "Get inside, Clara." "Mr. Whitaker, the foal is in the north corral." "I know that, ma'am." "Then you know I am riding with you." "You are not." "I am Mr. I am the only one in this house who knows how that foal will follow. I have fed it from my hand for 4 days. It will come to me when it will not come to a man it has never seen." "Clara, get me a horse, Mr. Whitaker, now." He looked at her. He looked at the orange line spreading across the dark north horizon. He looked at the way her hands were not shaking. "Jonah, saddle the gray mare for Miss Bennett." "Boss." "Saddle her, Jonah." Jonah saddled the gray mare. Clara Bennett swung up into the saddle the way a woman swings up who has spent her girlhood on the back of a plow horse in a Missouri cornfield, and she settled her boots in the stirrups, and she looked down at Caleb Whitaker. "Mr. Whitaker." "Ma'am." "You will not lose this ranch tonight." "I know I will not, Miss Bennett." "Then ride." She kicked the gray mare, and she was gone down the road toward the orange line in the north. And Caleb Whitaker swung into his own saddle and went after her, and Jonah and Tom and Manuel and 2 Hawks came behind them, and the smoke was already coming over the rise, and somewhere beyond the smoke a foal was screaming for its borrowed mother, and Clara Bennett was riding straight into the fire to bring it home. The gray mare took the rise at a dead gallop, and Clara Bennett leaned low over her neck and called the foal's name into the smoke. She had not given it a proper name. She had only called it Little One for 4 days in the kitchen, and Little One was what came out of her mouth now. "Little One, hey, Little One." Caleb came up beside her on his bay. He had his bandana pulled up over his nose. "Clara, the corral fence is down on the west side. The wire is dragging." "Then I will go in on the east side, mister." "You will not. The east side is closer to the burn." "It is also closer to the foal. Caleb Whitaker and I did not ride out here to argue with you." She kicked the gray mare and was gone before he could grab the bridle. 2 Hawks came alongside Caleb at a hard canter. He pointed with his rifle. "Jefe, the yearlings, they are running south." "Let them run, 2 Hawks. They will run themselves out. Find the foal." "The woman has found it, Hefe." Caleb turned in the saddle. Clara had reined up at the east gate of the north corral. She was off the mare. She was through the gate. She had her hands cupped to her mouth, and she was calling. "Little one, come on now, sugar. Come to mama. Come on." The foal was in the corner of the corral, jammed against the rails, half blind with smoke. The other 7 head were boiling around it in a panic churning, kicking up dust and ash and red-orange light from the burning grass beyond the fence. "Little one, hey, hey, sugar." The foal's small dark head came up. "That's right, baby. That's right." It took one step. It took another. The big bay gelding spun and almost trampled it. "Hey! Get off, you brute!" Clara Bennett stepped between the gelding and the foal. She slapped the gelding's nose with the flat of her hand. The gelding shied sideways. "Clara, in the name of God." "Get the gate open, Caleb. Wide. Now." Caleb threw the gate. The 7 head boiled out through it and went thundering down the fire break toward the creek. 2 hawks rode after them. Jonah came up with a wet sack. The foal stood in the middle of the corral alone, swaying. Clara walked to it. She did not run. She put her arms around its small wet neck. She pressed her face into its mane. "Come on, little one. Come on, sugar. We are going home now." She walked it out of the corral one slow step at a time. The smoke was rolling thicker. A coal popped somewhere, and a tongue of orange jumped the fire break 20 yards behind them. Caleb saw it before she did. "Clara, the fire is over the brake run." She did not run. She put her body between the foal and the fire, and she walked. "Clara." "I am walking, Caleb Whitaker. The foal cannot run." "Clara, the wind has turned." It had. The wind had come around hard out of the southeast, and the fire was now running with it straight at her back, eating the dry grass faster than a man could spit. Caleb spurred the bay. He came in at a full run. He reached down out of the saddle. "Clara, hand." She did not give him her hand. "Caleb, take the foal." "What?" "Take the foal. Across the saddle. I will run." "Clara." "Take the foal." He took the foal. He hauled it across his saddle bow, 60 pounds of wet bone and shaking muscle, and he wheeled the bay, and Clara Bennett ran behind him, through the smoke, holding the bay's tail in both hands, and the fire came roaring up the rise behind them, like a thing with a mouth and an appetite, and Jonah Pike came in at a dead gallop and threw the wet sack across Clara's shoulders, and they made the creek by 20 yards. 20 yards. When the men counted it later by daylight, they walked it out on their boots, and it was 20 paces from the line of scorched earth to the place where the gray mare had stopped trembling, and Clara Bennett had sat down on the bank of the creek and laid her cheek against the foal's small dark head and laughed. She laughed. She did not weep. She laughed the way a woman laughs when she has looked the devil in his red eye and walked past him. Caleb Whitaker stood over her with the smoke still in his beard. "Clara." "Mr. Whitaker." "You were inside that fire by 10 seconds. "I know it, mister. You could have died." "I know it." "Why?" "Because the foal would have died, Caleb. And I do not let a thing die that I have already kept alive for 4 days. Not for fire, not for the devil, not for anyone in the town of Abilene." He sat down on the bank beside her. He did not look at her. He put his head in his hands. "Clara Bennett." "Caleb Whitaker." "I will not get used to you." "You should not, mister. You should not." They sat on the bank until the false dawn broke over the prairie, and the men beat out the last of the burn with wet sacks, and the foal slept against Clara's knee, and somewhere in the smoke, the gray mare drank from the creek. They lost 40 acres of pasture. They did not lose 1 head of stock. They did not lose the barn. They did not lose the house. Caleb Whitaker counted that the work of the Almighty, and a stubborn woman from St. Louis, and he said so to Jonah Pike on the ride back to the house, and Jonah Pike tipped his hat to the gray mare and said, "Yes, boss, I reckon it is." They slept 3 hours. At noon the next day the barn caught. It was Henry Coombs who saw the smoke. He came running into the kitchen with his hat in his hands. "Miss Clara! Miss Clara, the barn! Clara dropped the bowl of beans. The men were on their feet before she was. Caleb the barn. I see it, Henry. Jonah the pump, Manuel the buckets, 2 hawks the horses out the south door. They beat that fire down in 20 minutes. The barn lost a corner in the loft. The horses came out coughing but alive. The hay was gone, but the structure stood. Caleb Whitaker walked the barn after the fire was out. He walked it slow. He walked it twice. Jonah Pike came around the side of the barn with something in his hand. Boss? Jonah. You will want to see this, boss. It was a tin lantern. The glass was broken. The wick was burned to a stub. It had been thrown into the corner of the hayloft from the outside through the loft window. Jonah. Boss? Whose lantern is this? It is not ours, boss. None of our lanterns has a green bail. This one has a green bail. Caleb Whitaker turned the lantern in his hand. He turned it slow. Jonah. Boss. Walk the south side of the barn with me. They walked it. There were boot tracks in the dust under the loft window. 2 sets, coming and going. Pointed boots, not work boots. Pointed boots the kind a card dealer wore. The kind a hotel clerk wore. The kind no cowhand on the Whitaker ranch had ever owned in his life. Caleb came back to the house. Clara was in the kitchen with her sleeves rolled up, washing soot off her forearms in the basin. Clara. Caleb. Sit down, ma'am. She did not sit down. Tell me what you found. A lantern in the hayloft. A lantern that does not belong to this ranch. 2 sets of boot tracks coming and going from under the loft window. Pointed boots. Clara Bennett went very still. The wet rag in her hand dripped onto the floor. Pointed boots. Yes, ma'am. With a heel. Yes. And a green-bailed lantern. You know whose it is. She closed her eyes. I know whose it is, Caleb. She was not given time to tell him. The sheriff's wagon came up the road at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Sheriff Bill Tatum on the bench. Mrs. Eliza Hargrove beside him in her widow's bonnet. 6 men on horseback behind. 3 of them with rifles across their pommels. Caleb Whitaker walked out to the porch. Clara came behind him. He turned and put his hand on her wrist. Inside, ma'am. No, Caleb. Clara. I said no. The sheriff pulled up. He climbed down. He took off his hat. Caleb? Bill. Caleb, I have come on a hard errand. I expect you have, Bill. There is a charge laid against the woman in your kitchen. The charge is arson. The charge is that she set the fire last night in the north pasture and the fire this morning in the barn to punish the town of Abilene for the way she has been treated. The charge has been sworn before me by Mrs. Eliza Hargrove and signed by 6 citizens of the town. Bill, look at me, Bill. I am looking, Caleb. That fire last night in the north pasture was set by the Lord Bill, by lightning. You saw the storm. Every man in this county saw it. That fire took 40 acres of my grass and almost killed my new foal, and the woman in my kitchen rode into it on a gray mare and saved every head of stock I own. Do you understand me, Bill? Caleb. Do you understand me, Bill Tatum? Caleb, the charge is about both fires, the pasture and the barn. There is a witness. A witness. A witness who says he saw the woman in your kitchen with a lantern behind the barn this morning before noon. What witness? The sheriff looked at the ground. Bill, what witness? A man who is staying at the Drovers Hotel in town. A man who says he is Miss Bennett's husband. Caleb Whitaker turned his head. Slow. Clara. Clara Bennett did not look at the sheriff. She did not look at Mrs. Hargrove. She looked only at Caleb Whitaker, and her gray eyes were as flat and as level as the day he had pulled her out of the dust in Abilene. Caleb. You have a husband, Miss Bennett. I do not. Then who is this man? His name is Silas Creed. He is not my husband. He never was. Clara. Caleb, let me say this once. I will only say it once. Say it. She turned and faced Mrs. Hargrove. She faced the sheriff. She faced the 6 armed men. My name is Clara Bennett. I am 27 years old. I was born in a sod house in Cedar County, Missouri. My mama died of cholera when I was 11. My daddy raised me on a corn farm until he died of the same when I was 19. I went to St. Louis with $60 and worked 7 years in 3 hotels and 1 steamboat. I never stole 1 penny from any man. I never lay down with any man. I was promised marriage by Silas Creed, who was the night clerk at the Planters Hotel where I was head cook. He told me he loved me. He told me he had $400 saved. He told me he had a house in Independence. She stopped. She breathed in. On the 14th day of June 1879, Silas Creed walked into the safe of the Planters Hotel and took $800 belonging to the proprietor, Mr. Howard. He left a letter on the safe door that said, "The cook took it." He left town on the night train. He left me to swing for it. The porch was silent. I did not swing for it, Sheriff, because Mr. Howard knew me. Mr. Howard knew me 8 years. Mr. Howard wrote a letter saying I was not the thief. But Mrs. Hargrove was right about one thing, Sheriff. Mr. Howard could not keep me in his kitchen, not with my name on the lips of every chambermaid in the building. So Mr. Howard paid me 4 weeks' wages and put me on a westbound stage, and he gave me back the letter Silas Creed had left on the safe door. He said, "Clara, keep this. Someday you may need it." She reached into the front of her dress. She drew out a folded paper tied with black ribbon. She held it up. I have carried it ever since, folded against my skin. It is in Silas Creed's hand. It says, "Mr. Howard, your cook took the money. I am sorry to bring you the news. Sincerely, S. Creed." It is signed. It is dated. And it is the only thing in the world that can put Silas Creed in a prison cell where he belongs. Mrs. Eliza Hargrove had gone pale. The sheriff took 2 steps back. "Miss Bennett, are you saying—" "I am saying, Sheriff, that Silas Creed has followed me to Abilene. I am saying he has been buying drinks for Mrs. Hargrove's nephew at the Drovers Hotel. I am saying he has been planting his story in this town for the 4 days I sat in Mrs. Hargrove's boarding house. I am saying he burned that barn this morning to destroy this letter because he believes I keep it in the kitchen. I am saying the boot tracks under that loft window belong to him, and that lantern with the green bale is the lantern that hangs on the porch of the Drovers Hotel, and any man who walks into that hotel right now can see for himself which one is missing." Sheriff Bill Tatum looked at Mrs. Eliza Hargrove. "Eliza." "Sheriff, she is lying." "Eliza, is the lantern missing from the porch of the Drovers Hotel?" "How would I know, Sheriff?" "Eliza, is your nephew Tobias still drinking at the Drovers Hotel?" "Sheriff." "Eliza Hargrove, you answer my question." Mrs. Hargrove did not answer. It was Henry Coombs who saw them coming first. "Boss, riders, coming up the road, a lot of them." Caleb turned. There were a dozen on horseback. There were 3 more in a buckboard. They were a quarter mile out and coming fast. "Who is leading them?" "Boss, I cannot see from here. He is in a black coat. He is on a sorrel horse." "Sheriff." "Caleb, tell your men to stand down. There is about to be a killing on this porch, and I would prefer it not be one of your boys." The sheriff turned to his deputies. He raised his hand. The 6 rifles came up off the pommels. Clara Bennett took 1 step forward. She put the letter back inside the front of her dress. "Caleb." "Clara." "You will go inside the house." "I will not." "You will go inside, mister." "Clara, I am not—" "Caleb Whitaker. That man on the sorrel horse is going to put a bullet through me in the next 4 minutes. If you are standing in front of me, he will put it through you. And I have not come this far to watch you bleed out on this porch for the sake of my pride. Clara." "Go inside." He did not go inside. The riders pulled up at the gate. The man on the sorrel horse swung down. He was 35 years old with a black coat, a black hat, a thin black mustache, and pointed boots with a riding heel. He carried a Colt revolver low on his right hip. He walked up to the porch with 2 men behind him. "Sheriff Tatum." "Mr. Creed." "You have come for the woman I trust." "I have come for the truth, Mr. Creed, The story has grown a little since this morning. The story is simple, Sheriff. That woman is a thief and an arsonist, and she is also my lawful wife, and I have come to take her back to St. Louis to answer for her crimes." Clara Bennett walked to the edge of the porch. "Silas? Clara, darling? Do not call me darling. Clara." "Silas Creed, you will look at me when I am speaking to you. You will not look at the sheriff. You will not look at the men behind you. You will look at me." He looked at her. "Silas, I have the letter." His face did not change, but the hand on his hip moved 1/2 inch. "What letter, darling?" "The letter you left on Mr. Howard's safe, in your hand. Dated the 14th of June. I have it with me. I have it on my person. The sheriff is going to read it. And then you are going to ride back to St. Louis in irons." "Clara, you are confused." "I am not confused, Silas." "Clara, give me the letter, darling. Let us be sensible. Let us go back to the hotel and talk." No. She drew the letter from the front of her dress. She held it out toward the sheriff. Silas Creed drew his Colt. It came up clean and fast and level the way a man draws who has done it 100 times in the back rooms of St. Louis card houses, and the muzzle came up at Clara Bennett's chest, and his thumb was on the hammer, and his eye was steady. Caleb Whitaker did not have time to think. He had time only to move. He stepped sideways. He stepped between Clara and the gun. He raised his right arm to push her further back behind him, and the hammer fell, and the gun cracked, and the bullet went into Caleb Whitaker, high on the left shoulder, just below the collarbone, and came out the back of his coat in a fine red mist. Caleb staggered. He did not fall. Jonah Pike was already moving. He came off the side of the porch in a low dive, and took Silas Creed around the waist, and they went down together in the dust at the foot of the steps, and the Colt went one way, and Silas's black hat went the other, and Two Hawks was on top of him with a knee in his throat before he could draw breath. Sheriff Tatum had his own gun out. He pointed it at the two men behind Silas. "Hands up, boys. Now! You will not die for him today." They put their hands up. Manuel Vargas took the Colt from the dirt. Henry Coombs was crying. Tom Reed was on the porch with his rifle aimed at the heart of any man on horseback who twitched. Caleb Whitaker sat down hard on the porch step. "Caleb." Clara Bennett was on her knees in front of him in 1 second. She had her hands inside his coat. She had her hands pressed against the wound. Blood was coming through her fingers. "Caleb, Caleb, look at me." "I am looking, Clara." "Caleb, the bullet went through. I can feel where it came out. It did not hit the bone. It did not hit the lung. You will live, mister. Do you hear me? You will live." "Clara." "Hush, mister." "Clara, listen." "I am listening, Caleb." "I did not stand in front of that gun because you were helpless, ma'am." "Caleb, I stood there because you were telling the truth. You were telling the truth, Clara Bennett, and there was not a man on this porch but me who wanted to hear it. And I was not going to let him shoot the truth out of your mouth." She did not answer him. She put her forehead down on his chest, and she wept. She wept the way a woman weeps, who has not been believed in 4 years. She wept the way a woman weeps who has stood alone in the dust of 3 towns, in the kitchen of 3 hotels, on the deck of 1 steamboat, in the parlor of 1 boarding house, holding a folded letter against her skin, and waiting for 1 human soul to look at it and say, "I see you, Clara Bennett, and you are not what they said. And you." Caleb Whitaker did not move his hand to her hair. He could not move it. His left arm was no good, and his right was holding him up off the porch boards. But he put his chin down against the top of her head, and he said it again. "You were telling the truth, ma'am. You were telling the truth the whole time." She wept. Sheriff Bill Tatum took the letter from where it had fallen on the porch boards. He read it twice. He folded it. He looked at Silas Creed in the dust with Two Hawks' knee in his throat. "Silas Creed, you are under arrest for arson, attempted murder, grand larceny in the state of Missouri, and 1 count of being the lyingest snake I have laid eyes on in 21 years of carrying this star. You will hang in Independence, mister, and I will not lose a minute of sleep over it. He turned to Mrs. Eliza Hargrove. "Eliza?" "Sheriff." "You will get down out of that wagon. You will walk into that house. You will put a clean cloth on Caleb Whitaker's shoulder. You will do it on your knees if you have to. And when you are done, Eliza Hargrove, you and I are going to have a long conversation about what a Christian woman does and does not do with the truth in her keeping." Mrs. Eliza Hargrove climbed down from the wagon. Her hands were shaking. She walked past Clara Bennett, who was still on her knees on the porch with her bloody hands inside Caleb Whitaker's coat. And she did not look at Clara Bennett, because she could not look at Clara Bennett, because the thing in her chest that had let her stand on her own porch 4 days ago and call this woman wicked had cracked clean through, the way the boarding house window had cracked at high noon. Inside the house, in the kitchen on the shelf where Clara had placed it on the first afternoon, the jar of peach preserves stood untouched, its candle wax seal unbroken, the handwriting on the label still saying, "Sarah June, 1876, and a single late afternoon ray of summer sun came through the open window and lay across it like a hand laid in blessing. Caleb Whitaker did not see it. His eyes were closed. He had passed out from blood loss, with his chin still resting on Clara Bennett's hair. She held him up. She held him up against the porch post with her own shoulder, and she pressed the wound with both her hands, and she did not let him fall. The doctor came out of Abilene at 2:30 on the back of a borrowed mule, and he was inside the house in his shirt sleeves by 3. "Miss Bennett, boil water. Find me clean linen. Tell the boy with the lantern to hold it steady." "Yes, sir." "How long has he been out?" 11 minutes, doctor." "Pulse. Steady but slow. The bleeding has stopped on the entry. The exit is still weeping." "Miss Bennett, are you a nurse?" "No, sir, I am a cook." "Then you are a cook who has stitched a man before." "My daddy, 3 times, plow accidents." "Hand me that needle." She handed him the needle. He worked for 40 minutes. She held the lantern. She did not flinch when the doctor probed for the cloth that had been carried in by the bullet. She did not flinch when Caleb groaned and tried to come up off the kitchen table. She put her hand on his good shoulder and she pressed him down. "Easy, Mr. Whitaker, easy, you are all right." "Clara, I am here. Don't let go." "I am not letting go." She did not let go. When the doctor was done, he washed his hands in the basin and dried them on a flour sack, and he looked at Clara Bennett a long moment. "Miss?" "Sir?" "That man would have bled out on the porch boards if you had not put your hands inside his coat." "I know, sir." "Most women would have screamed." "Most women have not buried a daddy, sir." The doctor nodded one time. He took his hat off the peg. 3 weeks bed rest. No riding, no lifting. Broth and biscuit for 2 days. Whiskey for the pain if he will take it. He will not take it. He is a Whitaker. Doctor. "Miss? What do I owe you?" "You owe me nothing, miss. The sheriff has already paid my fee. He said to tell you it came out of Silas Creed's pocketbook, and that Mr. Creed will not be needing it in Independence." The doctor tipped his hat. He left. Caleb Whitaker slept through the night. Clara Bennett did not. She sat in the chair beside the kitchen table where they had laid him, and she watched him breathe, and every time the breath caught, she put her hand on his chest until the next one came, and she did not close her eyes once. Henry Coombs brought her coffee at 4 in the morning. He did not say anything. He set the cup on the table, and he stood beside her for a long while with his hat in his hands. "Miss Clara." "Henry." "Is he going to be all right?" "He is going to be all right, son." "Miss Clara, I prayed." "That was good of you, Henry." "I have not prayed since my mama died, miss." "It was good of you all the same, son." Henry Coombs put his hand on Clara Bennett's shoulder, the way a boy puts his hand on his mother's shoulder, and then he took it away, because he was not sure he was allowed to, and he left her to her coffee. Caleb Whitaker opened his eyes at sunrise. "Clara, I am here." "How long?" 16 hours, mister. Silas. In the Abilene jail. The sheriff took him last night. He will go to Independence on Tuesday's stage. Mrs. Hargrove. Clara was quiet a long moment. She is at her sister's house in town. The sheriff has put her under formal warning. She gave a sworn statement at 9 o'clock last night. She admitted she knew her nephew was drinking with Silas Creed at the Drovers Hotel. She admitted she repeated the things Silas told her without writing once to Mr. Howard in St. Louis. She admitted the church committee was her idea, not the Reverend's. Clara. Caleb. You should sleep. You should drink this broth. She fed him broth. She fed him biscuits soaked in coffee. She fed him 3 soft-cooked eggs at noon, and at 1 o'clock she made him sit up in the bed she and Jonah had moved into the front room, and at 2 o'clock the first wagon came up the road. It was Mr. Aaron Hadley from the general store. He had a sack of flour, a sack of sugar, 5 pounds of coffee, a tin of cinnamon, a bolt of muslin, and a box of needles in the bed of his wagon. He climbed down. He took his hat off 3 steps before he reached the porch. Miss Bennett? Mr. Hadley. Miss Bennett, I have brought what you came in to buy on Tuesday. I have brought it with my compliments. I will not take a penny for it. I have come to ask your forgiveness, ma'am, and I will say my piece on this porch if you will hear it. Clara Bennett looked at him a long moment. Mr. Hadley, I will not hear it on the porch. Come inside, have coffee, speak to me at the kitchen table like a Christian, and I will give you my answer there. He came inside. He sat at the kitchen table. He turned his hat in his hands, and he said his piece, and Clara Bennett poured him coffee, and she listened to every word, and when he was done, she said only one thing. Mr. Hadley, I forgive you for the flour. I will not be cooking from your shelves again. I will be cooking from the shelves in Salina, where I was given the flour I needed on a day when this town said I could starve. But I forgive you for the flour, sir, because I will not carry that weight any further than this kitchen. Drink your coffee. He drank his coffee. He left the supplies on the porch. He drove out. He was the first of 9. By Saturday 7, merchants and 2 ranchers' wives had come up the road to the Whitaker house. Some brought goods. Some brought hams. 2 brought job offers, very respectful and very generous, asking Clara Bennett if she would consider running the kitchen of the Drovers Hotel now that the proprietor had fired the cook who could not bake a biscuit. Clara Bennett refused them all. Mrs. Edwards? Yes, Miss Bennett. I am obliged for the offer. I am not interested. I am the cook at the Whitaker Ranch, ma'am, and I am also now the manager of its kitchen, its ledger, and its supply. And Mr. Whitaker has tripled my wages from $6 a month to $18, and he has given me Sundays free and 1 week in October to ride wherever I please. I am very well situated, Mrs. Edwards. Very well situated indeed. Miss Bennett, I had no notion. There was no notion to have, ma'am. The arrangement was made yesterday. Will you drink coffee? I will drink coffee, miss. Yes, I will. Clara Bennett poured her coffee. She did not pour it grudgingly. She did not pour it with triumph. She poured it the way a woman pours coffee for another woman who has come a long way up a hot road to say something hard. The arrangement had been made yesterday. Caleb Whitaker, sitting up in his bed with his left arm in a sling and his face still gray, had said to her, Miss Bennett, you will not cook for $6 a month in this house. Another day. And she had said, Mr. Whitaker, you cannot afford $18 a month. And he had said, I cannot afford 12. I will pay you 18 anyway. The Donovan contract will go to Pickett out of Wichita. He pays 9 cents less a head, but he does not care who fries my bacon. We will eat. And she had said, Caleb Whitaker, you are a fool. And he had said, Yes, ma'am, I am. Jonah Pike heard the whole exchange from the doorway. He grinned. He tipped his hat to Clara. He went back to the barn. The men accepted it as if it had always been so. Henry Coombs called her Miss Clara to her face, and the boss lady behind her back when he was talking to Manuel Vargas. Tom Reed limped into the kitchen the next morning carrying a chair he had rebuilt himself out of oak from the woodpile, and he set it down at the kitchen table at her place, and he said, Miss Clara, this here is your chair. Don't let no man sit in it. 2 hawks came in on Sunday with a pair of beaded moccasins that had belonged to his sister, and he laid them on the kitchen table without a word, and Clara Bennett wept for the second time in her life in that house, and she wore the moccasins inside the kitchen every morning after that, until the day she died 41 years later. It was on the 8th day after the shooting that Caleb Whitaker walked the hallway to the south bedroom door. He had refused help. He had walked it on his own, with his left arm in a sling, and his right hand on the wall for balance, and he had stopped at the door, and he had laid his hand on the brass key. Clara Bennett was in the kitchen with her hands in bread dough. She heard his footsteps stop. She knew where they had stopped. She washed her hands. She wiped them on her apron. She walked down the hallway and stood 3 paces behind him. "Mr. Whitaker." "Clara, you do not have to do that today." "I know it." "You do not have to do it ever." "I know it, ma'am." "Then come back to the kitchen." He did not come back to the kitchen. He stood at the door a long time. His shoulders began to shake. He did not weep out loud. He did not bend. He just stood with his good hand on the brass key and his left arm in its sling, and he shook the way a man shakes who has not let himself cry in 3 years and 7 months. Clara Bennett walked up behind him. She did not touch him. "Caleb." "Clara, would you like me to be in the room when you turn that key?" "Yes, ma'am. I would like that very much. Then we will turn it together." She put her hand over his. She did not turn it for him. She let him turn it himself slow, both their hands together, and the lock clicked, and the door eased open on its hinges, and the smell of 3 years of closed-up air and lavender and old paper came out into the hallway, and Caleb Whitaker took 1 step inside the room and stopped. "Clara." "I am here." "Her hairbrush is still on the dresser." "I see it, mister." "Her shawl is still on the chair." "I see it." "There is a letter on the bedside table, in her hand." "Caleb." "She wrote me a letter, Clara." He walked to the bedside table. He picked up the letter. There were 2 thin pages. They were folded in thirds. They were tied with a piece of yellow ribbon. The ribbon had been tied by a dying woman's fingers. He could see it in the looseness of the knot. He sat down on the edge of the bed. He could not open it with one hand. Clara Bennett came and sat down beside him. She did not ask. She took the letter from his hand. She untied the ribbon. She held the pages out to him. "Read it." "Clara, I cannot." "Yes, you can." "Clara, my hand is shaking." "Then I will read it, mister, if you tell me to." "Read it." She read it. It was dated the 12th of October, 1876. 3 days before Sarah Whitaker had died. The handwriting was thin and careful and getting weaker by the line. It said, "Caleb, my love, the doctor was here this morning. He says it will be in a few days. I have asked the Lord for 1 more spring, and the Lord has said no. I am not afraid. I am only sad for you, husband. You will be alone in this house, and I cannot bear it. So I am asking you a thing. I am asking you to find another woman. Not next month, not next year. But when she comes, Caleb, and she will come, you will know her by this. She will not be like me. She will not look like me, or cook like me, or laugh like me. She will be entirely her own, and you will resist her at first. Do not resist her husband. Open the door. Open this very door if you must. Let her sit in my chair. Let her wear my shawl if the winter is cold and she has none of her own. I am not jealous, my love. I am dead. The dead are not jealous of the living. They are only afraid the living will stop living too. Do not stop. Love her, Caleb. Love her well. And tell her from me that I am glad she has come. Your wife, Sarah. Clara Bennett's voice did not shake until the last line. Then it shook. Caleb Whitaker sat on the edge of the bed and he wept. He wept with his good hand over his face and his left arm in its sling. And Clara Bennett sat beside him and did not touch him, because she knew he had to weep, this weeping alone, and she only laid the letter back on the bedside table and folded her hands in her lap and waited. When he was done, he wiped his face with the sleeve of his good arm. Clara. Caleb. She told me to find you. Caleb, she did not know me. She told you to find a woman. She did not know it would be me. She knew Clara. Mr. Whitaker. She knew. She wrote she will not be like me. She will be entirely her own. That is you, Clara. That is the description of you written 3 years before I laid eyes on you in the dust of Abilene. Clara Bennett did not answer him. They packed Sarah Whitaker's room together over the next 4 days. They did not pack it in a hurry. They sat on the bed and Caleb told her stories about each thing. The blue dress was the dress Sarah had worn the day they were married. The hairbrush had been her mother's. The little ivory comb had been her grandmother's. The shawl had been knit by her sister in Ohio the winter before she died. Clara folded each thing. She laid them in a cedar trunk. She did not put one piece away without asking Caleb first if he wanted to keep it out. He kept the hairbrush. He kept the wedding ring, which had been on the dresser in a small china dish. He kept the letter, which he folded back into its yellow ribbon and put in his own breast pocket. Everything else went in the trunk. The trunk went in the attic. When the room was empty, Clara Bennett swept it and washed the floor and washed the window and opened the window for the first time in 3.5 years. The fresh air came in. Caleb Whitaker stood in the doorway. He did not cross the threshold. Clara. Caleb. I will not sleep in this room. I did not ask you to, mister. I will not ask you to sleep in this room. I did not expect you to, mister. What I will do, Clara Bennett, is leave this door open. Yes, mister. That is a good thing to do. The summer turned into the gold of late August, and then the burnt copper of September. The doctor came out and pronounced Caleb fit to work. He rode again. He branded calves. He drove a small herd to picket out of Wichita and brought home a respectable check less than the Donovan contract would have been, but enough to pay the spring loan and put coal in the cellar for winter. He came home on a Friday at sundown. He came up the porch steps. Clara Bennett was on the porch in a clean apron with her hair tied back, and she had been waiting for him with a plate of cold ham and biscuits. Mr. Whitaker. Miss Bennett. You are late, mister. I am, ma'am. I had business in Wichita. And what business was that, mister? He set down his saddlebags. He sat down in the chair beside her. He pulled something out of his coat pocket. He turned it over and over in his hand. Clara. Caleb. I bought a thing in Wichita. What thing, mister? A ring. She did not move. A ring for what, Caleb Whitaker? For you, if you will have it, and me with it. She set the plate of ham and biscuits down on the porch rail. She did not look at him. Caleb. Clara. I will not answer you tonight. Clara. Hear me out, mister. I am hearing you. I came to this house in July. It is September. I have been here 10 weeks. I have been your cook for 9 of them and your kitchen manager for 1. You were shot 8 weeks ago. We buried your wife's things 4 weeks ago. We have known each other, mister, the length of 1 summer. 1 summer. And you are asking me to marry you. I am, ma'am. Caleb, I want you to listen to me very carefully. I am not Sarah. I know that, Clara. I am not the woman she described in her letter. You are Clara. I am not a cure for your loneliness, mister. I will not be married for that reason. I will not climb into a wife's chair because the chair was empty and the kitchen was cold and the men needed someone to bake them biscuits. Do you hear me? I hear you. If you tell me you love me because I came along, Caleb Whitaker, I will pack my suitcase tonight and ride to Salina in the morning. Clara. Tell me why. He sat in the chair on the porch, and he held the ring in his good hand, and he was quiet for a long moment, and the moths came around the lantern, and somewhere out by the barn, Henry Coombs was teaching the foal to wear a halter. Clara Bennett. Caleb Whitaker. I was lonely before you. I have been lonely for 3 years and 7 months and 11 days. I will tell you the truth, ma'am. If you had been any other woman, if you had been a quiet woman, if you had been a woman who needed saving, if you had been a woman who walked into my kitchen and asked me what I wanted for supper, I would not be sitting on this porch with a ring in my hand. I would have sent you back to Abilene on the next stage with 2 weeks' wages and a kind word. I am asking you because you stood in the dust and told a drunk to give back your knife. I am asking you because you fed a foal that I had given up for dead. I am asking you because you rode into a fire on a gray mare. I am asking you because you put your hands inside my coat. I am asking you because you said to me, "Do not call it protection, if you are only ashamed to stand beside me," and I have not been able to forget those words for 8 weeks, Clara. I am not asking you because you filled an empty chair. I am asking you because you are Clara Bennett, and there is not another Clara Bennett anywhere on the green earth. And if you say no tonight, I will ask you again tomorrow, and the night after that, and the night after that, until either you say yes or you tell me to stop, and only then will I stop. She was quiet for a long time. She looked out across the yard. The lantern in the barn was still burning. Henry Coombs was laughing at something the foal had done. Two Hawks was singing in his own language low the way he sang at dusk. Caleb. Clara. Ask me tomorrow. Tomorrow. Yes, mister. All right, Clara. He put the ring back in his pocket. He picked up his plate. He started to stand. Caleb. Clara. Ask me right now. He sat back down. Clara Bennett, will you be my wife? She looked at him. She did not smile. Her eyes were wet, but her chin was up the way it had been up on the day he had pulled her out of the dust. Yes, Caleb Whitaker, I will. He put the ring on her finger with his one good hand. It took him 3 tries. She did not help him. She let him do it himself. When it was on, she put her hand over his hand, and the lantern in the barn went out, and Henry Coombs called good night across the yard, and Clara Bennett laid her cheek against Caleb Whitaker's shoulder, the shoulder that had not taken the bullet, and they sat in the chairs on the porch a long time without speaking, because there was not one more word in either one of them that needed saying that night. They were married on the 3rd of October, 1879, in the front room of the Whitaker Ranch House by a circuit preacher out of Topeka, who had never heard the name Clara Bennett before, and who therefore had no opinion about it. There were 11 people in the room. Jonah Pike stood up with Caleb. Henry Coombs stood up with Clara. Tom Reed cried into his hat. Manuel Vargas played the fiddle. 2 Hawks gave the bride away because nobody else had asked to, and Clara had said, 2 Hawks, will you walk me down the hall? And he had said yes. Miss Clara, I will walk you, and that was that. Sheriff Bill Tatum came. The Reverend Marsh did not. Mrs. Eliza Hargrove did not. Clara wore a gray dress. Not a wedding dress. The same gray dress she had been wearing the day she stood in the dust of Abilene with her bleeding lip and her broken Bible. She had washed it. She had mended the torn collar. She had pinned at her throat a small brooch that had belonged to Sarah Whitaker, which Caleb had taken from the cedar trunk in the attic and laid in her palm the morning of the wedding, and said Sarah would want you to have it, and so would I. The preacher said the words. Caleb said, I do. Clara said, I do. The preacher said, you may kiss the bride. Caleb kissed his bride with his one good arm around her shoulder, and his other arm still healing in its sling, and Tom Reed cried louder into his hat, and Henry Coombs whooped, and Manuel Vargas struck up the first dance. There was no honeymoon. There was a ranch to run. Winter came hard that year. The cold came in November and did not go until April. Caleb and Clara worked through it side by side. She kept the books. She kept the ledgers. She ordered the supplies from Salina by mail and from Wichita by wagon. She paid the men. She wrote letters for Henry Coombs to his married sister in Missouri, because Henry Coombs could not write more than his own name. She read the newspapers aloud at supper. She did not once go into the town of Abilene from October until May. The town came to the ranch instead. It started with a man named Ezra Bell. He came up the road on foot in February, with his beard frozen to his coat. He was 48. He had walked from Kansas City. His wife had died in a fire. He had lost his farm to a banker. He had no place to be. Clara saw him from the kitchen window. She opened the door before he reached the porch. Mister? Ma'am? Come in, sit down, take off those boots before you lose the toes. Ma'am, I cannot pay. I did not ask if you could pay. She fed him beef stew and cornbread and hot coffee with 3 sugars. She had Henry Coombs run a bath. She had Manuel Vargas find him a clean shirt. He stayed 3 nights in the bunkhouse. On the 4th morning he was gone with a pair of Caleb's old gloves in his pocket and a letter from Clara to her cousin in Wichita who needed a hired hand for the spring. He was the first. Word travels on the prairie the way fire travels in dry grass. By April there had been 9. By June there were 19. By the end of the first summer of the Whitaker marriage, the ranch on the road out of Abilene was known by name in the cattle camps from the Red River to the Platte, and the name it was known by was the place where a body could get a hot meal without being asked first what kind of body he was. Clara built the summer kitchen the 2nd week of July. She built it herself with Henry Coombs and Manuel Vargas hauling the lumber. It was a small, low building beside the ranch road with a long pine counter and a brick oven and a chimney and 4 shutters that propped up to make windows. She put a sign over the door. The sign said, Bennett's Kitchen. Coffee, 2 cents. Stew, 5 cents. Bread on the house. No questions asked. Caleb stood in the road with his hands on his hips when she finished it. Clara. Caleb. It says Bennett's Kitchen. It does, mister. You are a Whitaker, ma'am. I am a Whitaker in church, Caleb. I am a Bennett in this kitchen. The kitchen is mine. He smiled. He had been smiling more that summer. Yes, ma'am. By August, the kitchen was feeding 40 travelers a week. Cattle drivers stopped on their way north. Salesmen stopped on their way west. Sheepmen, who could not get a meal in Abilene because the Abilene cattlemen would not eat in a room with a sheepman, stopped at Bennett's Kitchen and ate beef stew beside the very cattlemen who would not sit with them in town, and there was not one fight in the whole of that first summer because Clara Bennett Whitaker had hung a second sign next to the first, and that sign said, No politics. No liquor. No cruelty. You may speak of your mother and the weather. The cook will set the bread down when you have spoken enough. The cattlemen learned to speak of their mothers. They were better men for it. There came a Tuesday in late August when a wagon pulled up at the kitchen at high noon. A girl climbed down. She was 17. She was 8 months pregnant. She was barefoot. She had 2 black eyes and a swollen lip, and the man on the bench of the wagon was shouting at her in a voice that carried 50 yards. Get back up here, woman! Get back up here right now! Clara Bennett came out of the kitchen with her apron on. She walked past the girl. She walked up to the wagon. She looked up at the man on the bench. Sir? Ma'am, this here is my wife, and she is coming back to the wagon. Sir, what is your name? My name is Wendell Drake, and that is my wife, and she is coming back to the wagon. Mr. Drake. Ma'am, your wife is staying in my kitchen tonight. She will sleep in my house. She will eat at my table. And tomorrow you will come back and you will speak to her in front of me and in front of my husband, and if she chooses to climb up on your wagon, she will climb up. And if she does not, sir, you will ride out alone. Ma'am, you do not have the right. Sir, look at me. Look at me, Mr. Drake. He looked at her. There is a sheriff in Abilene who owes me a favor. There is a doctor in Salina who owes me a favor. There is a federal marshal in Topeka who owes my husband a favor going back 6 years. You will turn that wagon around. You will ride out. You will come back tomorrow when you have remembered how a man speaks to the mother of his child. You will not raise your voice on this road again today. Do you hear me, Mr. Drake? He heard her. He rode out. He did not come back the next day. He did not come back the day after. He did not come back at all. The girl's name was Annie Drake. She had her baby in the Whitaker spare bedroom on the 11th of September with Clara holding her hand and the doctor from Salina cursing the wagon ride. It was a girl. Annie Drake named her Clara. She stayed at the ranch through the winter. She left in April with a letter from Clara to the same cousin in Wichita who had taken in Ezra Bell, and she made a life there, and she wrote to Clara every Christmas until Clara died. That same August, Tobias Hargrove came up the road on foot. He was 23. He was the nephew of Mrs. Eliza Hargrove. He had been the boy at the Drovers Hotel drinking with Silas Creed. He had been the boy who carried Silas's stories back to his aunt. He had been the boy whose name was in the sheriff's report and on every page of the gossip in the county for the whole of that spring. He stood in the road at the foot of the porch with his hat in his hands. "Mr. Whitaker." "Tobias." "Sir, I have come to ask for work." "You have come to the wrong porch, Tobias." "Sir, I know I have, but I have walked from Abilene this morning because there is no other porch in this county where a man who has done what I have done will be heard. I have done wrong. I am not asking for pardon. I am asking for work. I will sleep in the barn. I will eat what is left over. I will not speak to Mrs. Whitaker if she does not wish me to. I will work 2 years for the wages of 1. And if at the end of 2 years you tell me to go, sir, I will go, and you will not see me again." Caleb Whitaker did not answer him. Clara Bennett Whitaker came out onto the porch. She had flour on her hands. She wiped her hands on her apron. She looked at Tobias Hargrove a long minute. "Tobias?" "Mrs. Whitaker." "Look at me." He looked at her. "What did your aunt say when you told her you were coming here?" "She did not say anything, Mrs. Whitaker. She has not said anything to me in 4 months. She has not said anything to anyone in 4 months. She does not come out of her room." Clara Bennett Whitaker was quiet a long moment. "Caleb." "Clara." "Hire him?" "Clara, are you sure?" "I am sure, mister." "At what wages?" "At full wages, the same as Henry Coombs. He will sleep in the bunkhouse. He will eat at the table. He will not be punished in this house for the sins of his aunt, because we do not punish children in this house for the sins of their elders. And he will work hard, Caleb Whitaker, because he has come up the road on foot to ask for it, and a man who has done that does not need to be watched." Caleb tipped his hat back. "Tobias." "Sir, come up on the porch, put your hat on the peg, sit down at the kitchen table. Mrs. Whitaker will feed you, and then you will come out to the barn and Jonah Pike will tell you what time we ride in the morning." Tobias Hargrove came up onto the porch. He put his hat on the peg. He sat down at the kitchen table. He wept into his folded arms for the better part of an hour, and Clara Bennett Whitaker did not look at him while he did it, because she remembered what it was to weep at a kitchen table in front of a woman who had no business watching it. When he was done, she put a plate of cornbread and beans in front of him and she said, "Eat, son," and he ate, and from that day forward, Tobias Hargrove was a Whitaker hand, and the men called him Toby, and he stayed 11 years. It was the second week of October when the wagon came up the road carrying Mrs. Eliza Hargrove. She was sitting in the back. She was wrapped in a black shawl. She was 82 pounds. The wagon was driven by a Methodist woman from town named Mrs. Clemens, who had been Mrs. Hargrove's closest friend for 31 years and had stopped speaking to her in May. Mrs. Clemens climbed down. She knocked at the door. Clara Bennett Whitaker opened it. She had bread dough on her hands again. She seemed always in those years to have bread dough on her hands. "Mrs. Clemens?" "Mrs. Whitaker. What can I do for you, ma'am?" Mrs. Clemens did not speak. She turned. She pointed at the wagon. "She is dying, Clara. The doctor says 4 days, maybe 5. She will not eat. She will not speak. She has asked for one thing in 9 days." "What is the thing, Mrs. Clemens?" "She asked for your broth, Clara. She said I would like a cup of Mrs. Whitaker's chicken broth before I die. That is the only thing she has said in 9 days." Clara Bennett Whitaker did not answer right away. She wiped her hands on her apron. She turned and looked into the kitchen. The fire was lit. The pot was on the back of the stove. The chicken had been simmering since noon. "Mrs. Clemens." "Mrs. Whitaker." "Bring her in." "Clara." "I said bring her in, ma'am. She will not die in a wagon at my gate. Bring her into my kitchen. I will give her the broth myself." They brought her in. Caleb Whitaker carried her in his own arms because she weighed nothing at all, and he laid her in the rocking chair beside the cook stove, the very chair Clara had sat in to feed the foal milk from a rag, and he did not say one word the whole time he carried her because there were not words for what he was doing. Clara Bennett Whitaker poured the broth into a china cup with a chip on the rim. She put a spoon in the cup. She sat down on the low stool beside the rocking chair. "Mrs. Hargrove." The old woman did not open her eyes. "Eliza, open your mouth." Mrs. Eliza Hargrove opened her mouth. Clara spooned the broth in. It went in slow. Mrs. Hargrove swallowed. Another. She fed her another, and another. She fed her the whole cup, one slow spoon at a time, while Mrs. Clemens stood in the doorway with her hands pressed to her face, and Caleb Whitaker stood at the stove with his back to the room because he could not watch. When the cup was empty, Mrs. Eliza Hargrove opened her eyes. Mrs. Whitaker. Eliza, you are feeding me. I am, ma'am. You should not be. That is not for you to decide, Eliza. I called you a wicked thing. On my porch, in front of the town, I called you wicked. I remember. I would not have fed you a cup of broth, Mrs. Whitaker. If you had come to my door in this state, I would have shut the door. I know it, Eliza. Then why? Clara Bennett Whitaker set the empty cup on the floor. She folded her hands in her lap. Eliza, I will tell you why. I will tell you once. I am not feeding you because I have forgotten. I have not forgotten one word you said on that porch in July. I will not forget them on the day I die myself. I am feeding you because if I do not feed you, then the woman you said I was is the woman I become. And I will not become her Eliza Hargrove. Not for you. Not for the town. Not for any pleasure of being right. I will not become a woman who shuts a door on a dying neighbor. That is the why. Eat the rest of your broth. There was no rest of the broth. The cup was empty. Clara Bennett Whitaker stood up. She poured a second cup. She fed it to her spoon by spoon. Mrs. Eliza Hargrove died on the fourth day after in her own bed in town with Mrs. Clemens on one side and a letter from Clara Bennett Whitaker in her right hand, which she had asked Mrs. Clemens to read to her every morning, and which Mrs. Clemens read to her on the morning of her death, as the sun came up over Abilene. The letter said only this, Eliza. The broth is still on the stove. If you want another cup, send word. Clara. She did not send word. She had not the strength, but she died with the letter in her hand, and that is a thing some women in Abilene remembered for the rest of their lives. The years went on. The runaway girl came up the road in the summer of 1882. Her name was Pearl. She was 9 years old. She had walked 23 miles from a farm where the man of the house had used a strap on her once too often. She came to the kitchen door at sundown, and she said, "Ma'am, are you the lady who feeds people without asking?" And Clara Bennett Whitaker said, "Yes, child. I am." And Pearl Whitaker stayed 46 years and learned to knead bread on a stool in the summer kitchen with her sleeves rolled up and married Henry Coombs' nephew and raised 4 sons of her own in the second house Caleb built on the ridge. It was on the evening Pearl learned to knead bread that Caleb Whitaker stood in the doorway of the summer kitchen with his hat in his hand and his face brown from the summer sun and his left shoulder still showing the small white pucker where the bullet had gone through. He watched his wife guide the small hands of the runaway girl through the white flour. He did not go in. He stood at the door and he watched, and Clara Bennett Whitaker did not see him watching because she was busy teaching, and Pearl Whitaker did not see him watching because she was busy learning. And the late summer sun came down across the Kansas prairie behind him, and laid its long gold hand over the long pine counter, and over the iron oven, and over the heads of his wife and the child, who would be a daughter in everything but blood. He stood there a long time. In the country where they lived, men branded cattle with hot iron to prove ownership. They burned the mark of the rancher into the hide of the beast. They did it because cattle could not speak for themselves, and a brand was the only language the law would hear at the railhead in Kansas City. In that same country, in that same summer, women branded other women with words. They burned the mark of a rumor into the skin of a sister, and they called it Christian work, and they did it because they had been doing it since the world began, and because there were no laws against it, and because there was no railhead where a woman could go to be unbranded. Clara Bennett had taught Caleb Whitaker that no human soul should ever be branded by rumor. She had taught him by standing in the dust of Abilene with her chin up and her gray eyes level. She had taught him by feeding a foal that should have died. She had taught him by riding into the fire on a gray mare. She had taught him by reading a letter on his porch in the face of a Colt revolver. She had taught him by feeding a cup of broth to a woman who had once tried to shut her in the dirt. And she had taught a whole stretch of prairie, the same lesson, one hot supper at a time, one stranger at a time, one runaway child at a time, for 36 more years, until the day she lay down in the bed beside Caleb Whitaker for the last time and closed her gray eyes. The woman the town of Abilene would not touch on a summer noon in 1879 became the hand that saved an entire home, and then a second home, and then a county, and then a stretch of road from the Red River to the Platte. She became the cook whose name was carved into the lintel of a building that still stood 120 years after she went into the ground. She became the wife whose grave on the ridge above the Whitaker Ranch carried only 6 words chosen by Caleb himself the morning after she died, cut deep into the limestone, where the prairie wind could not wear them away. The 6 words said, "She was not what they said." And she was not. She never had been. She never was.